And now I would like to introduce to you Miss Alice Wright in the lovely pink sweater. She is our timekeeper tonight. She is keeping time on the format that was agreed to. It was sent to the candidates. They agreed to it. And Janelle had final say on questions. The other chairman did not have final say-so on questions. So I'm going to hand it off to Janelle. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally. I feel warmed up. You know, I was with the Peach Crew this morning, so I feel like I'm already warmed up a bit. And to quote Debbie Dooley said something while we were on the show. She said it's going to take a heck of a lot more than just MAGA to win in 2026. So that means it's going to take all of us coming together and working together to win. So let's start tonight. And I love it. Only at a Republican event will we hear like someone shooting against the wall, like, and no one cares. I know, I feel very safe, you know? I have to acknowledge my husband. Kelvin King is here. I know. Who's packing too? No. No, so just so you know, each of the candidates are gonna get Each of the candidates are going to get a 4-minute opening so that they can share what their plans are. There's going to be 6 questions that will probably be asked. I know there's several different questions, but we may get to some. We may get to all of them. May get to more. But after that, you're going to have 2 minutes to answer your question. You have a 2-minute closing. All right? Ready to go? All right, so I'm going to start by allowing Mr. Cross to start by doing your 4-minute opening.
Gotta like hold it sideways and eat the mic, right? All right, so my name's David Cross. I'm currently the 2nd vice chair of the Georgia GOP. And when I was elected in 2023, I told you that I was going to be an agent of change. And one of the challenges that I've faced in trying to be an agent of change is I've been accused of throwing sand in the gears. And the reality is that by being an agent of change, I was really looking to make it so that the grassroots people that are out there across the state that have really connected with me, that we would get them reconnected with the Georgia GOP and make it so that we brought the team together. And I haven't been really engaged at all in the last 2 years, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that we don't have any transparency in the Georgia GOP. You don't have financial records. We don't have a properly filed party. You're not being kept informed right now. You're getting an email probably 3 or 4 times a week that tells you a little bit about something that's going on in the country, and then you're getting a little red donate button. That's not keeping you informed. Keeping you informed is telling you what's going on, telling you what our successes are, what our challenges are, and what you as a member of this organization can do to move the needle for the Georgia Republican Party. Now, one of my major challenges that we have going forward in 2026 is that we have all of our constitutional officers are coming up on the ballot. And when I talk with some of the candidates that are going to be running, I've asked, Steve Gooch, I've asked Lieutenant Governor Jones, do you have a Trump Force 47 on the ground? And they both said, I wish I did. And so what I'm looking to try and do is to reinvigorate this organization, put in a fantastic growth plan that excites people, attracts members, keeps them engaged, makes them want to be part of something that's bigger and better and bolder. I want to make it so that when we have events like Laura Trump coming into town, it doesn't cost you $500 a plate to sit down or $1,000 a plate so that you can get your picture taken. An event like that should be $40 to cover the cost of your chicken and your mashed potatoes and maybe offset the event. 1 minute left. All right, it needs to, and if we do something like that, and we have a speakers that can come in town to a northern location, a South Georgia location, and an Atlanta location, what's going to happen is we're going to have 1,000 people that are going to show up at an event like that. It's going to be positively electric. We're going to recognize people for their hard work. We're going to be giving them awards. We're going to be sending them home feeling fulfilled and feeling like they've done something and making their friends want to get re-engaged and become part of the party. So again, my name's David Cross. I'm currently your second vice chair. I would be honored to have your vote as chairman of the Georgia GOP. Thank you.
Mr. Coon?
So you're going to hear two contrasting visions this evening. You just heard 4 minutes on the Georgia Republican Party, and you did not hear Donald J. Trump. The goal in 2024 of the Georgia Republican Party was to elect Donald J. Trump President of the United States and to carry Georgia for Donald Trump. And we did that. And I want to talk for a minute about the trends. You know, if you think about it, the political organization in a lot of ways, it's like a football team. It's a team sport. And in 2018, our team won. We got Governor Kemp over the finish line. The certified result of that election, 45,000 vote win. 2020, the certified result of that election was about a 12,000 vote loss. 2024, the certified result of that election was a 115,000 vote victory for Georgia Republicans. That came by having leadership and implementing a winning strategy. You know, we had one of the best field programs in the nation. And the Trump Force 47 program, if you met a Trump Force 47 staffer, that was a Georgia Republican Party employee. If you went to a Trump Force 47 office, that was leased by the Georgia Republican Party. We organized thousands of people. We focused on low propensity voters that we knew if we could get them into the ballot box, they would vote for Donald Trump. And we got over 4 million people to vote early in this election. And of those 4 million people, 800,000 of them did not vote in 2020. That sounds like success to me. We also had the best election integrity program in America. We hired more lawyers than we ever have had before. We recruited and trained more volunteer lawyers than we ever have had before in the history of our party. Over 500 lawyers statewide working to make sure we had a fair election. With your help, we recruited more poll watchers than we've ever had before. We covered more poll watching shifts than we've ever had before. We filed more election integrity lawsuits than we ever had before. We intervened in more of those lawsuits to defend against Democrat attacks on our election integrity laws than we ever have done before in the history of our party, and we won more of those lawsuits than we ever have before in the history of our party. And that brought people together. It made them feel confident in honoring us by going to the polls and casting their vote. So we didn't just win the presidential race, though. We won all 9 Republican congressional seats. We returned Republican majorities to the General Assembly. We took over 130 of Georgia's 159 counties and shifted them to the right. And we're going to execute that game plan again in 2026 if we put the A team on the field. We put the team on the field that knows how to win. And I've demonstrated that. I've been the head coach the last 2 years. We won the Super Bowl on November 5th. I don't think the natural reaction to winning the Super Bowl is to fire the front office and start over with someone that hasn't been a head coach. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I'm asking for your vote. My name is Josh McKoon. I would be honored to have the opportunity to be the volunteer chairman of the Georgia Republican Party for 2 more years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Now, both of you gave us a compelling opening statement, but I want to drill down a little bit. How would you define, since I started with you, David, I'm going to start with you, Josh, on this one. How would you define success in the role of a chairman, as a chairman? Like, just drill it down.
Absolutely. So success, in my opinion, in 2024 was getting Donald Trump elected and electing Republicans up and down the ballot. The additional challenge we have had, which we are very close to finishing, is beating the phony witch hunt against Donald Trump and our Georgia electors. And because we've raised over $3 million from Georgia Republican Party donors during my term as chairman, we were able to pay for lawyers that got Fani Willis thrown off of that case. So in 2026, what does success look like? In my opinion, it looks like this. We fire John Ossoff. We replace him with an America First conservative that will support Donald Trump. The Senate majority right now is built on Mitch McConnell. It's built on Lisa Murkowski. It's built on Susan Collins. We need an America First conservative representing Georgia. We don't need Georgia having California's third U.S. senator, right? And we've got to keep control of the governor's mansion. We can keep control of the legislature. If we elect a Democratic governor, you can forget it. The Georgia governor's office is one of the most powerful offices constitutionally in the country. And so for me, success, and we got to be laser focused on it, just like we were in 2024. You can't get distracted by the noise. You've got to stay relentlessly focused on achieving your goals. And that means being able to raise money. It means being able to bring people together. It means being able to build teams. It means being able to rally a grassroots army of volunteers to get those voters out. Because we saw it in Wisconsin, right? Getting voters out when Donald Trump is not on the ballot is harder to do. And so we are going to have to work very, very hard to target specific voters and maybe some different voters than we turned out in 2024. So you've got to be able to raise the resources. You've got to be able to organize. And yes, it's important to have relationships with the people that are running for office. So you have a trust factor with the people that are representing our party as our nominees and being able to get everybody to buy in. We have a very diverse party, right? We have people that have lots of different positions on a lot of different issues. If you're in this role, you can't be dividing people all the time. You've got to try to remind everybody relentlessly that we've got to be together. Thank you.
Mr. Cross, same question.
I can't remember the question.
Okay. How would you define success in the role of chairman of the Georgia GOP?
Okay, the way that I would define success in the role of the Georgia GOP is I would have a team that is recognized throughout the state so that we can have people, oh, hey, so you're tearing up my legal notice. Okay, so she's been defaming me. All right, so what we've got to do across the state is we've got to have a program where the grassroots are being recognized. We've got to have a growth program. In 2024, you were just told in 2024 that we won by, we won, by 115,000 votes. Folks, that's 2.2%. And Trump spent a ton of money down here. The momentum is in Washington, D.C. The momentum is not going to be here in Georgia in 2024. It is up to us. We have got to create the clone of Trump Force 47. And I've got the plan to be able to put those people on the ground, reactivate the ones that we had before, and at the same time, bring in growth from new people and getting new people involved out there. The other thing that we've got to do, too, is we've got to honor President Trump. He just passed an executive order that said he wants paper ballots, all right? President Trump said paper ballots, and we just went through the most recent legislative session. And for the first time since 2020, there was nothing of any significance that was passed with regard to election security in the state. We still have got Dominion machines that are going to be outmoded and outdated. We've got Brad Raffensperger still telling us who's going to be, winning the races in the state. And he just got $66 million of our money to plow into this machine that's going to be obsolete next year, we've got to have closed primaries. That's an absolute must. Our primaries right now are open to manipulation, but there's to define success, it's way more than 3 or 4 minute discussion. But we've got to energize and invigorate people across the state, from every corner. We've got to get people excited. If we don't have people excited, we're not going to win in 2024 or 2026. Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned having a plan. So Josh, I want to start with you. What is your plan to win in 2026? Can you lay it out for us?
Sure. So what we've got to do, number one, is we've got to have the financial resources to mount a campaign. I know people don't like to hear that we need to raise money, but that is the one thing that every effective political organization has in common. If you dealt with Trump Force 47 staffers, they were paid. They were paid to be here full time. So if you want that again, you're going to have to raise the financial resources to be able to hire them. And you're going to need the relationships with the RNC, with the constellation of national organizations that are going to come to the table. I've built those relationships. When Chairman Whatley ran for a full term in January at the RNC meeting, he asked me to give his seconding speech because of the relationship we've built over the last year and a half. There's a reason Charlie Kirk has endorsed me for another term. There's a reason Turning Point Action has endorsed me for another term, because they know the machine we were able to construct together to turn out the vote. And people that are going to be on the ballot next year, like Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and Congressman Mike Collins, have endorsed me because they understand that. So you've got to raise the money, you've got to field the right team, you've got to then have the strategy about how do you define the voter universe? How many voters do we believe are going to turn out in November of 2026? And how do we make sure that we get the turnout we need to win that election? And to win that election as we did in 2024, by a margin that was too big to rig, by a margin that could not be lawfared away. And that is what we did in 2024. So we're going to have a robust election integrity program just like we did in 2024. We are going to have a field team like we had in 2024. If it's not broken, you don't fix it. You rebuild it again. And we're going to work with all of our partners, not just Turning Point, Greater Georgia, Faith and Freedom Coalition, all of the Tea Party Patriots, all the different organizations that came to the table. We were able to do some amazing things together because when you have good leaders in place that have built these relationships, you're able to get a lot more done. And yes, I'm proud of the fact that I called Laura Trump. She was willing to come to Georgia to help the Georgia Republican Party. I'm proud of the fact we had over 300 Georgia Republicans come to that event. And yes, I'm proud of the fact we raised over $300,000 because you know what? John Ossoff raised $11 million in the last 90 days. This is no joke, people. It's going to be a $500 million race. This is the #1 U.S. Senate campaign in America. We can't mess around. This isn't Alabama. It's not Oklahoma. It's Georgia. It's center right. But you better have the right person in place that understands not only what the plan is, but how to execute the plan. And I've demonstrated I can do that.
Mr. Cross?
Okay, so the plan in the last 5 years, we have lost 19 Republican House seats. We've lost 2 United States Senate seats. We've lost 5 state Senate seats. And in the most recent election, we had 5 state House seats that were within 2% of the margin. And going into next year, we're gonna have a really difficult time if we don't activate the base that's out there. We've got tons tons of people. I met tons of people here tonight that have said, I've never been, to a Republican Party event. I was in Walton County last night. New faces out there where people are saying, I've never been involved. I've never participated. This is my first time. And I'm telling them, get involved, all right? There's a young man named Jaquan Stembridge, 18 years old. He's getting involved. He's running, in this race. I'm excited for that young man. We need new young people that are involved out there. Can you imagine if I become chairman, one of the things that we're going to implement is going to be something called the Chairman's Club. It sounds a little bit elitist, and it's meant to be a little bit, but here's the deal. You get into Chairman's Club one of two ways. If you donate more than $2,000 a year to the Chairman's Club or to the Georgia GOP, you're automatically in Chairman's Club. That's going to get you invited to special events with special speakers. But the other way that you get into the Chairman's Club is if you participate as a delegate or an alternate at the state convention. You're automatically in. You're automatically going to be invited to those special events. You're going to be recognized for the work that you're doing. Participating that way takes a huge amount of energy and effort to go to the county precinct, caucuses, then to the county convention, then to the district convention, then to the state convention. You're probably spending well over $2,000 of your time and energy to be there. We've got a lot of work to do. In Georgia right now, 40% of the voters here, we have no idea how they vote. They just don't participate enough for us to know. 40% of 7 million people is 2.8 million voters. That's our opportunity. That's where we can find voters. In DeKalb County, they went 17% Republican, 83% Democrat. There's gigantic opportunity there because a lot of the immigrants that live in those counties, they share our ideals. They share our values. They want to participate. They just need to be asked to the dance. Thank you.
Thank you. Both of you talked about fundraising and finances, so let's start talking about finances a little bit. To start, can you both share what experience you have with FEC reporting? And I'll start with you, Mr. McKoon.
So I've served as an election lawyer in my time as a private practice attorney. I'm very familiar with FEC laws, FEC reporting requirements. I'll tell you, though, to me, one of the most important things is understanding how you navigate that from a fundraising standpoint, because the Georgia Republican Party raises both federal dollars and state dollars. And so for that U.S. Senate election, if you're an individual, you can give up to $10,000, your spouse can give up to $10,000, and that is money that's available to campaign in a federal election. But the other real key to federally funded campaigns is being able to work with the Republican National Committee and the National Senate Republican Committee as well, because they can transfer dollars to the party. So having those relationships is really important to be a player. But the other thing you've got to be able to do is raise a lot of your own money. Because if you want a Georgia-based messaging strategy, if you want a Georgia-based field team, you've got to be able to raise your own money. So I've had, probably a decade and a half of experience with campaign compliance at the state and federal level. I served on the Senate Ethics Committee for 8 years in the state Senate. So very familiar with all of those compliance requirements. Thankfully, we have Karen Henschel in our office who's been with us for 15 years. And she does an incredible job compiling our reports and making sure that we're fully transparent. Of course, we have to report monthly on federal receipts and expenditures. The state has a slightly different schedule, but every dollar in and every dollar out is reported to public authorities. You can go out online and see every single thing that we're spending money on. It's something that's very important. But to me, it is equally important to be able to deploy, when you talk about campaign finance, a fundraising strategy. One of the things we did that was kind of unique in 2023 is, for the first time ever, we called on presidential campaigns to give voluntary contributions to the Georgia Republican Party as part of our process of assessing their viability. That allowed us to raise an additional $225,000 for the Georgia Republican Party. We came up with really good partnerships, like Seth Weathers with Ultra Right Beer. Seth sold a special beer can and donated a portion of the proceeds to the party. That raised another $50,000. So you got to be creative. You got to think outside the box while understanding what the box is by being familiar with campaign finance laws.
All right. Mr. Cross, same question.
Okay, so the question is about what is my knowledge about campaign finance laws? All right, so
FEC reporting.
FEC reporting. I'm going to tell you right now, I have no experience with FEC reporting. All right, and what I would do is what any competent professional, like I run my own company, I don't do everything. What I do is I hire professionals to handle that. As it stands right now in the Georgia GOP, we have a treasurer that does not have access to all of the financial records. Hey, it is absolutely true. Our treasurer is a friend of mine. I've known her for 20 years. She actually handles my taxes for my company. I've known Laurie McLean for, like I said, for over 20 years. And she put out a tweet on Twitter that said, you know, that the Georgia GOP treasurer has really no visibility into the total financial picture of what's going on in the Georgia GOP. She has no visibility into the management of the Georgia GOP funds. But here's the thing. When it comes down to FEC filings, I will hire a competent professional to be able to handle that. Whether it's Karen Henschel or somebody else or an attorney that's going to be able to do that for us, I'm going to hire that out. The same way I would in any company, the way that a CEO doesn't do everything. Josh wants you to believe that an attorney, that if he as an attorney is not at the Georgia GOP, that this whole thing is going to fall apart. That's not the case, all right? David Schaefer was not an attorney, and neither was the previous, our previous, chairman. Sue Everhart was not an attorney, all right? When it comes down to it, I'm in the investment management business. I am responsible for managing and overseeing over $100 million for my clients' money. I am in the habit of asking people for their trust. I am in the habit of asking people for millions of dollars and to trust me with everything that they've got. I've been talking to people that have 9-digit net worths, and they want to give. But what they tell me is that they have no idea when the money goes into the Georgia GOP, what it's being spent on. In the investment management business, if I buy stock in a company out there, you know what happens every quarter? I get a financial report that tells me exactly what's going on with the company. It tells me how much money has come in revenue, where they've spent it, is it profitable, are they above, are they making a profit, are they doing well, are they not doing well? We need to have competent professionals in that place. Again, my role is make sure that we have the seats that are filled with the most knowledgeable people. And I'll tell you right now, when it comes to FEC filing reports, I'm going to have a fantastic person in there doing the job.
Thank you. Continuing to talk about finance, I'm going to start with you, Mr. Cross, since that answer. What is do you have a plan or a budget prepared for the midterms in 2026? What are you seeing, and how much do you think it's going to cost, and what's your budget plan?
So the budget for for 2026 is really going to come down to working with our candidates that are running for office. It's going to be tremendously expensive. The Democrats are not only going to double down, they're going to triple and quadruple down. Georgia is no longer a ruby red Republican state, all right? We are purple, and they want to turn us blue, and that is repugnant to me. It's going to take a huge amount of time, effort, and resources in order to get our folks elected. But I will tell you this, we've also got to focus on the local races out there too. In South Georgia, for instance, in a lot of the rural counties that are out there, we can move the needle with very small amounts of money in order to bring in Republican sheriffs, in order to bring in our county commissioners. and our school boards. In Gwinnett County, we were able to change the school board out there and get it back to a Republican majority without having to spend a huge amount of money. So to the point about what's it going to take, what's the budget, I can tell you right now, I don't know what the budget is, but I am a numbers guy. That's what I do for a living. All right, I've been doing it for 34 years. I can tell you we'll be able to plan things out. I do financial plans for a living. I help people figure out how are we going to get from point A to point B in the future. It's just simple logistics and math to try and figure out how we're going to accomplish that.
Thank you. Chairman McKoon, same question. Do you have a budget prepared for the midterms in 2026?
So we are going to have to do better than we did in the last 2 years, right? We've raised over $3 million. That's not easy. That doesn't include the money that was transferred by the RNC and other outside transfers, but money where I picked up the phone, worked with others, and got that money in. $10,000 at a time, $5,000 at a time. That is not easy to do. It is not easy to pick up the phone and call a stranger and ask them to give after-tax dollars so that their government might get better. You probably want someone in this role that understands how to do that. And with all due respect to my opponent, the answer you just heard, there was nothing said about how are you going to raise this money. While we were fighting on two fronts over the last 2 years, the Arizona party had to sell their headquarters, the Michigan party went broke. The Georgia Republican Party was able to stay solvent because we had a game plan to raise the resources we needed to fight that legal battle while we were also fighting the political battle we needed to at the same time. So you need someone in this role who understands how to raise political money. And I know people don't like to talk about that, you know. It's like asking your children to eat their vegetables, right? Nobody wants to do it. You want to talk about something else or think about something else. But if you want to hire this staff, if you want to be able to send mailers to voters, if you want to text voters, if you want to have contact with voters, if you want to buy digital advertising, if you want to do the things it takes to win an election, it takes money to do that. And with this state being awash in political money in 2026, for us to be able to make an impact, we're going to have to raise very significant financial resources. And so I'm going to be going back to the donors that we've built trust with. You know, when we had the J.D. Vance Chairman's Dinner in December of 2023, that raised about $125,000. This event we had with Laura Trump, I mentioned earlier, we raised over $300,000. Well, how did we do that? We did that by building trust with these donors. They see what we're doing. They see that we're being able to bring disparate parts of this Republican Party together, that we're bringing together activists, that we're bringing together elected officials, and that we are winning, right? That is the most important ingredient, is being able to demonstrate that we have a winning strategy. So as your chairman, if I get another 2 years, we're going to have a much bigger budget because we're going to be able to go out and raise additional money because of the record we've built over the last 2 years. Thank you.
Mr. Cross, let's kind of continue with that. So what is your fundraising plan? Because fundraising is a heavy, heavy part of this role.
All right, so the easiest thing to do is, from a fundraising perspective, it's very similar to the investment management business. If I want to raise the assets of my company, the easiest thing to do is go to my existing clients. I'm going to ask them if they have additional funds that they can commit. You have to give them a compelling story of why and what's in it for them and how they're going to move the needle for Georgians and for their kids and their grandkids. That's the first part. The second part is you're going to reach out and talk to those same donors that have worked with us in the past and ask them, who do you know? All right? And it's a very simple question. Who are the two most successful business people that you know that share your values? It's a very simple referral trick that makes it so that we can actually reach out to people and start those relationships. Again, I'm telling you, I'm having conversations out there with people that are very wealthy, that have got huge net worths. They want to give, but what they keep telling me is, I'm giving my money to the candidates. because I don't know where it's going to when it goes into the party. I mean, I've done that myself, all right? But I will tell you this, when it comes to fundraising, every board I have ever been involved in, whether it's the hospital board or the Boy Scouts or whatever, I made sure that every single person that was on our board participated and gave something to the organization. In 2024 and in 2023, Josh McKoon gave nothing to the Georgia GOP until December 31st of last year. An $813 deposit showed up because I was raising a stink out there and pointing out the fact that he wasn't participating. That's a serious issue. How can you as the chairman go out there and ask somebody to raise, to give you money if you're not giving it yourself? 100% board participation. The last part is we have to reach out to the new folks that are out there. I'm talking about grassroots people where they can participate at $10 or $20 a month. There are tens of thousands of them just in Gwinnett County alone, where I'm from. There's 1 million of them across the state. They just need to be asked to the dance. And we've got to reach out to these people. So it's a multi-pronged strategy, but I've used it in my business. I have a very successful investment management business, and that's how we've raised money in the past, and it's worked there. It'll work in the Georgia GOP as well.
Thank you. Chairman McKoon.
So first of all, let me just address something that was said. Since I was elected chairman in 2023, and I know a little something about how these cycles go, the off year is really the lean time for the party. All the victory staff go away. That is the time you really have to dig deep to find money. And of course, your donors are not as activated because you don't have an election right around the corner. You don't have that urgency. So that's why earlier this year in 2025, I gave $10,000 individually to the Georgia Republican Party. It's why my campaign committee gave $10,000 to the Georgia Republican Party in support of the Laura Trump event for a total of $20,000. Now look, I don't think this is a contest about who's the richest person to be chairman of the Georgia Republican Party. That's not my view. I do think that you've got to have somebody in this role that understands how to raise political money. And with all due respect, it's nothing like raising money for a company or an investment. Because when people make an investment in a private business, they're expecting a monetary return. There is no monetary return here, right? You're basically saying, we hope we can win the election so that the government will get better and we'll be able to advance our ideas. It's totally different. Our finance chairman, Harrison Lance, our foundation chairman, Harrison Lance, has a lot of experience in that area, and we've talked about the fact it's totally different. It's a totally different skill set. So again, it sounds nice to say we're going to have dinners and sell $40 per plate, but that is not a recipe for raising the millions of dollars that will be needed in order to actually fight this election. And I will put my record up against anybody else in terms of what I have given to the Georgia Republican Party. I gave 8 years of my life in the state Senate. I spent time away from my family. I had death threats made against me when I was pushing the religious freedom bill that got signed into law last week. So I'll just tell you, I don't take second place to anyone when it comes to working hard for this party. And you don't either. We don't decide that you're important based on the size of the check that you write, but we've got to go find those check writers. Both of those things are true. We have to have activists willing to give of their time and talent, and we've got to have donors that are willing to part with their hard-earned money. Thank you.
Thank you. So a huge part of the role that's definitely going to be on the shoulders of both of you is unifying the party. How do you plan, Mr. Cross, to unify the party should you win?
Okay, so that's fairly simple. As it stands right now, you've got a choice between one candidate that is an entrenched career politician, all right? And a career politician is going to be somebody who is in it to be able to, bump themselves up along the way. You have a choice between somebody else who's a business person. This is going in and out. You have a choice between somebody who's a business person, and when it comes down to how we're going to succeed, again, going back to like the dinners that we just talked about, or that I just spoke about before, we're talking about getting the base energized. We've got to have as many people as we can out there telling the story, spreading the gospel of our conservative values, so that they get in there and they participate. We've got to be able to tell that story to as many people as possible, because if we don't, we're going to lose, and we're going to lose badly in 2020 and 2026. There's a ton of work that needs to be done. I'm planning on putting together a team of people that are going to work with me across the state, and when it comes to getting people merged together and engaged, I'm willing to go out there and talk with the folks that have been around for a long time. I've got lots of friends that are there. I'm recognized as a grassroots leader, and getting the grassroots, engaged and involved is going to be part of that. And if they see that they are recognized and appreciated, I believe that we can bring the two together so that we can unite forces. We've got a ton of people out there in the grassroots that put boots on the ground, that knock on the doors, that make those calls to get our folks elected. And we've also got folks that have been involved for an awful long time, all right? And I recognize that. I mean, I've kind of suffered from that myself. All right, when I got elected second vice chair, that was a shock to a lot of people. What it should have been is a wake-up call to folks that have been involved for a long time to say, here's somebody who's new, here's somebody who's energized, here's somebody who has connections across the state that are going to engage the grassroots and make sure that they're involved with the party. It's not going to be easy, but I think that I'm clearly the correct candidate to make that happen. I've got the connections.
Chairman McKoon.
So this is probably the question that creates the greatest contrast between the two people on this stage. I have worked very hard, and I make no apologies for it, of being in the political fight. And yes, I was a Georgia State Senator for 8 years. I drew a salary of $17,000 a year to work part-time and take time away from my family and my law practice to be in Atlanta to fight for conservative ideas. And I make no apologies for that. And yes, I think it is important to have some experience and to have some relationships to serve as chairman of the Georgia Republican Party. Being second vice chairman of the party, you're supposed to be aiding the chairman. You're not supposed to be running a shadow campaign for chairman. And if you've read the emails my opponent has sent out, you know the kind of division that we would be in for. The week before the legislature started in 2024, he said that the legislators were taking money for votes the week before the election, the week before the legislature came into session. Accusing the entire General Assembly of bribery is not a good way to build relationships. It's not a good way to bring people together. We have differences of opinion, but we don't need to be demonizing each other. And quite frankly, I've had a lot more I've had many more vicious, awful, false things said about me by people that call themselves Republicans than people on the other side. Why is that? We have an election next year. We can't be engaging in juvenile name calling and dividing each other and having a bunch of hurt feelings, because we need everybody to get on the field of play and make sure we don't let the Democrats take this state over, because the Democrats that are seeking to replace us are not Sam Nunn and Zell Miller. They are AOC clones that are right here in Georgia. And so we need to try to start to remember that the people in this room, even people that don't really like each other very much personally, have so much more in common than they have differences. So my relentless focus, as it has been for the last year and a half, is to say over and over again, come join us, come be part of what we're doing, let's get together. You know, that is the key to victory. Calling each other names, making false accusations, and trying to divide us over and over again, and then say, just kidding, is not a strategy to bring the party together.
So we opened up talking about how you define success. We talked about finances and all of that good stuff and plans. I want to start talking about our county chairs. I worked for the state GOP for a while, and I will tell you, our county chairs is the lifeblood of the party. And what I saw, this is before Josh, I was under the Watson administration, but what I saw was the need to continue to strengthen our county chairs. That's my personal opinion. I would like to know, I forgot which one I started with the first time. Was it you, David? I think it was you, David. So Josh, or Chairman McKoon. I would like to know, what is your plan to work with county chairs, and how do you strengthen the county level in order to win in 2026?
So there's a great opportunity because 2026, we don't have this wonderful convention cycle that we go through 3 out of every 4 years. So one of the things I want to do is a grassroots training summit to really fill in. You know, one of the ways that we were able to help a lot of our county chairs, but not all of them, was through our partnership with Turning Point Action. 19 of our county chairs were actually invited out to a 3-day conference that was all about voter data, getting out the vote, organizing your county, working with your precinct level leaders, and it was incredibly valuable. But I would love to be able to deliver that high level of training to all of our county chairs. Rich Elsorelli up in Hall County has this idea, and I don't want to say I'm taking credit for it at all, but it's something I want to implement, which is we have a lot of new county chairmen. And so I believe one of the things we need to do in this next cycle is have a mentorship program where we are pairing brand new county chairs with old hands, maybe people that are past chairs, to make sure they understand what they need to do to be successful. Because it does take all of us working together. When you think about winning 2024, it's like winning a football game by a field goal. You can point to lots of different things. You can point to cutting the margin of loss in some of our urban counties. You can talk about the really high, incredible turnout in our rural counties. And that's frankly the other thing we can do is take some case studies and talk to county chairs about how they can replicate what was done in some of these counties. You know, Towns County went over 80% for Donald Trump. They had something on the order of 75% of all registered voters in the county had voted before Election Day. That looks like success for us. So all of those things put together, but I couldn't agree with you more. We need to provide more resources to our county chairs. Hopefully, if we are able to execute on the fundraising plan that we're talking about, we can allocate some staff support for county chairs as well. Not just here in the metro Atlanta area, but equally important are our rural counties. You know, without rural Georgia in 2024, Donald Trump doesn't win those 16 electoral votes. So I would say grassroots summit, staff, mentorship program, and looking at those case studies and trying to replicate those best practices all over the state. Those are the things I think we can do to help our county volunteer leadership thrive and succeed. I will say during the election, we had weekly calls with our county leaders. We brought together Michael Watley, Laura Trump, other big-time folks to talk about specific actionable items we wanted to see. And it was because of that, Georgia was week after week the #1 swing state in voter contact. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cross, same question.
Okay, so the county chairs are, without a doubt, the most important leadership people that we have out there. They're frequently put into situations where they're brand new, or they put up their hand and said, I'll volunteer. All right? And then they have somebody who comes to them and says, I want to run for sheriff, or I want to run for county commissioner. And the county chair ends up going into, spinning into a tizzy trying to figure out how on earth, how do we do this? Who did this before? What's going on? My vision is to create a central resource center at the Georgia GOP so that when a county chair, whether it's a rural county or whether it's an urban county, doesn't matter, they are able to, to contact or put the candidate in contact with the Georgia GOP and say, here's the resource center. These people are going to help give you a plan for how you're going to go about raising money, how you're going to be putting on events. Here's the list of the donors that have typically given in the past. Here's the list of all the people that have gone out and knocked on doors out there. We've got to make sure that we've got people that are manning that center so that when somebody has an issue or a problem, they can call in. We can easily have a central resource hub where somebody can call in and say, hey, we're going to set up the bank account for you. We're going to set up the PayPal, donate button for you. We're going to help you, take care of the filings, because there are different filings between county races and bigger races. There's no point in putting somebody in jeopardy so that maybe they might become disqualified because they haven't done the paperwork properly. One of the things that troubles me about the Georgia GOP is that we haven't done this yet. So I will commit resources to make sure that we've got a central resource so that people can participate there. The other thing that we need too is data. Last year, we had something set up called Numenar. I think it cost the Georgia GOP $100,000, all right? Even if it was $50,000, all right? There's a group of folks that are out there. We built a tool for less than $10,000 that has hyper accurate data. One of the issues with Numenar is out in the rural areas, a lot of times they don't have great cell phone service out there. Sometimes they don't even have Wi-Fi at the meetings that they go to. It's difficult for them to use mobile devices. We've got a very simple tool that will make it easy for them to go out and know which doors to knock on of those 2.8 million people out there that don't participate enough. That's where the opportunity is.
I want to follow up. I have a follow-up question. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Cross. Because I know this is with Chairman McKoon being the chairman. I'm sure he interacts with our GOP chairs on a regular basis. What have you learned as you've been traveling around campaigning and speaking with county chairs?
All right, so what I've learned is that we've got some incredibly hardworking people out there. We've got some gifted and talented people. They need the resources to make their lives easier. A lot of them are just like us. They're working, they're handling a day job, and then the GOP, their county GOP is their passion. It's it's what they've dedicated their extra hours to so that they can make sure that they can make a difference. So with the county parties, what I've noticed is that there's also been some frustration out there with what's going to go on. All right, in Peach County, I'm sorry, not in Peach County, in Macon County, Georgia, there was a situation with a person that wanted to run for sheriff. We had a candidate who wanted to run for sheriff. It was a really, messed up race that was down there. There was a Democrat that had some legal issues that were going on, and somehow he still managed to be able to participate in the race. And that chairman down there was basically neglected by the Georgia GOP as far as being able to try and figure out what to do and how to handle it and what's the timeline and what are the legal issues and what do we do. I want to make sure that all of our counties across the state, particularly the rural counties that have limited resources, have got access to those kinds of resources to make their lives easier.
Thank you. Chairman McKoon, same question. What are you hearing as you're speaking with county chairs?
Well, people obviously want additional support, and we did that in 2024. Chairman McCarthy's here. DeKalb County is in litigation now over the Dominion machines. The Georgia Republican Party and the RNC have been proud to partner with the DeKalb County Republican Party in financing that litigation and taking it up on appeal. It is frankly the best live issue right now to get rid of the Dominion machines. So I thank you for your leadership on that, Chairman McCarthy. We worked with Fulton County, the Fulton County Republican Party. We financed litigation to ensure that we got a conservative Republican appointee to the Fulton County Board of Elections. We worked with other organizations on numerous pieces of litigation that involved Fulton County because that's where so many issues around state government occur. So we sued on November 2nd about the opening of election offices without notice or authorization in a number of the blue counties around the state. So we provided a lot of legal support. And with regard to Macon County, we had multiple conference calls with the chairman. There was free legal advice dispensed in that situation. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And unfortunately, we had a bad judge down in Macon County. But there's always more we can do. But if there's one thing you take away from this conversation tonight, every good idea you hear, I want you to think about a cash register ringing every time, because there's money that's got to pay for that. If you're going to go out and try to target additional voters outside of the base voters that you must turn out, that costs more money. That's Trump Force 47 plus. So I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but if it's going to be realistically achieved, it is going to require raising additional financial resources to make that happen. And all of this costs money. The litigation program cost money. I can't tell y'all how much money we spent, not just on the Willis witch hunt, which was hundreds of thousands into the millions if you add Chairman Schaefer's term, but all of the litigation around elections. And unfortunately, we can't walk away from that, because the Democrats are going to be there again with lawfare. We've got to be able to pay for that. And a lot of times that's going to involve supporting county Republican parties there. So hopefully, as we pull together and build on the success of 2024, we'll be able to raise even more money to support county chairs, because that is the number one thing I would say. Just like I'm the volunteer chairman of the Georgia Republican Party, all of our county leadership, they're volunteers. And so we need to try to provide additional support, and that is what I'm going to try to do over the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to change this up a little bit, and I'm going to ask my moderator question first, and then I'm going to take 2 questions from the audience. I'm going to randomly call in. So when I ask, I need you to shoot your hand up, and I'm going to call on the first person I see when I ask. When I ask. When I ask. So we're going to be fair. And I'm doing 2 questions to make sure that we have it as balanced as possible. My moderator question. We know that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And what I've noticed and what I've seen as of lately is that we have a lot of people who say they have courage, but when it's time to actually produce the courage, it doesn't show up. So I would like to know, how would you explain, or no, better question, can you give me an example of a time, either in this seat or at all, where you had to show courage in the face of opposition, and you did it strong, and you can still stand on it? I will start with you first, Mr. Cross.
Wow. Okay, so courage. I've been granted a lot of opportunities to display courage in my life. Starting when I was younger, helping a young man out of a car that got overturned in the rain, and other people would have been, waiting for somebody to come. I busted the window out of the car. It was upside down. I pulled him out. I'm an Eagle Scout. I used my scout skills to help save a man's life. Did the same thing with a young girl when I was 13 years old, and she got hit by a bike. It's interesting when we pray. We often pray for wisdom. And I think when you pray for wisdom, God gives you problems, to put in your path so that you can try to figure things out. That's the learning process. As far as opportunities for courage, doing this today, honestly, getting up in front of some folks that are here that are friends, and some other folks that are hostile, Takes a little bit of courage, all right? But it's something that we have to do. You know, I've got friends like Earl, way in the back. That man's got courage. You know, he gets up every day. He thanks God he's on the right side of the dirt, and he goes to work and he asks me questions, and we work together to try and solve problems. I think courage means not being afraid to challenge the unknown. All right? Every single day we're given opportunities where you can choose the easy path, or you can choose the unworn path. You know, I think Robert Frost said it best. I came upon a path in the woods, and the path diverged, and I chose the one that was I'm butchering this a little bit. I chose the not well-worn path. All right, it takes courage to do that. What are we at? We're at 1 minute or 30 seconds. Okay, so every single day we're given opportunities, for courage, and I encourage the people that are around me to stand up. Some of the folks that I work with, I've got a lady that's getting divorced right now that we're working with her and trying to guide her after a really long marriage to stand up for herself and to show courage, to fight back against an abusive husband. That's really what I'm here to do. I'm here to help encourage other people to show courage and to get out there and do the hard things. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman McKoon, same question.
So I think one thing we agree on is when you talk about the word courage, I think about a soldier on the battlefield. I think about a police officer protecting someone with their life. I think about a fireman running into a burning building. But if we're going to talk about political courage, I'll mention a couple of things. I fought for a lot of things that were not popular with the establishment of the time when I was in the state Senate. I was chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. It was made very clear to me that if I continued down the road I was on, that they would strip me of that title. It's like, okay, I'm going to keep doing the right thing. They took the chairmanship away from me. I couldn't get bills passed with my name on them because the Speaker of the House at the time, David Ralston, did not like me very much because I made a big stink about ethics reform when I was in the legislature. The only limitation on gifts was disclosing them. So you could take people to Europe, you could take people to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, you could do whatever you wanted to. I stood up for that. I paid a price for it. I'm proud of that. I don't regret it. But in this role, there have been a couple of hinge points, I think. One of those hinge points was in January of 2024 when we asked our state committee to take sort of an unprecedented step, and that was to endorse Donald Trump for president in that moment when Nikki Haley was the only one left standing and we were wasting millions of dollars fighting each other when we needed to get behind Donald Trump. And while unfortunately my opponent and others didn't agree with that and we weren't able to get it done at the state committee, I stood with our RNC delegation from Georgia on that Monday morning, and we said it's time for Nikki Haley to get out of the race. It's time for us to all get behind Donald J. Trump. And I am proud of that moment. I'm proud of that moment because it was something that defined that relationship. About a week later, I got a copy of that tweet in the mail signed by President Trump because he appreciated what we were trying to do there. Not just for him, but for the movement, for the America First movement. The other thing that I make no apologies about and that some people have strong feelings about is the removal of Brian Pritchard as first vice chairman of the Georgia Republican Party. We ran a campaign on election integrity. We could not have someone that voted illegally in 9 different Georgia elections in our leadership team. And that's why 86% of the state committee voted to remove that distraction, because you have to block out the noise and you have to go for the prize if you're going to win elections in a state like Georgia. Thank you.
Everybody hands down. I'm not picking you because you've already raised your hand. I said I gotta wait. Because I can't see the entire room, I'm going to pick one question from over here, and I'm going to do the next question from over here, from this side over. I'm going to count to 3. I'm going to count to 3. I'm going to count to 3. And on the third, that's when you can throw it out. Okay, 1, 2, 3. This is the first question I heard. First hand I saw was my lovely lady right here in the front. Yes. Please stand.
So I'm just thankful to be here. I prayed for both of you. Sorry for getting upset, because we have to be one party. So my question is, people tell you don't break something that's already fixed, or don't fix something that's not broken, right? So to both of you, or to Mr. Cross, why would you run against somebody that doesn't look broken? And because if we got the president across, which was the goal, instead of empowering, why are we going backwards than forwards? For both of them.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so why would I run against Josh right now? All right, I've already told you. Donald Trump won by 2.2%. Our numbers suggested that Trump should have won by nearly 7%. All right? What that means is that all of the independent voters that we don't typically know how they vote, if you reverse engineer the numbers, the only way that you get a 2% margin is if 60% of those voters went for Kamala Harris and 40% went for Trump. I don't find that credible. I still find that I think there are issues that are out there. Why am I running? Because in the last 2 years, we've lost more House seats. We're on the verge of losing 5 more House seats. I don't call that winning. And back to, I want to cover something that Josh brought up about, me not endorsing President Trump with this ill-timed resolution that came up in 2024. You asked me about courage before, all right? It took courage to stand up for principle because the rules of the Georgia GOP said you do not endorse a candidate before the primary. President Trump himself said, don't do it. I appreciate the thought, but don't do it. That's a tweet that he put out, and it's also a truth that he put out. Trump said, don't do it. Something else that's going to take, another reason why that I think why I'm running is because I want to create an accountability committee at the Georgia GOP. It's one of our responsibilities as a party to hold our elected accountable officials, accountable for their votes. We need to... We need to be scoring those people to see how they're doing. We need to have frank conversations with them, and if they're scoring poorly, go to them and say, hey, listen, you've got one more session to try and up your score as a Republican, and if you don't, you're not going to have an R next to your name. It's going to take new rules. When I ran as second vice chair, you know what my budget was when I sat down with people that wanted to help me? I told them my budget was 0. And they said, how are we going to win? And I said, we're going to win because of my good name and the people that know me across the state. I spent a whopping $800 to win. In this case right now, one of the things I think we need to do is we need to doge the Georgia GOP so that we can see exactly where our money's going. We've got to have transparency, keep you informed. We've got to have growth and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman McKoon, would you like to rebuttal?
So I do congratulate David for running for the office that I think he wanted to hold the entire time. He ran for second vice chairman. 6 months later, he was trying to get elected national committee man while being the second vice chairman. And now we're finally to the point where we're having a conversation about him being chairman of the Georgia Republican Party. So I think that's appropriate. The idea that the party's finances are not transparent is laughable. Every dollar that is spent, every dollar that is raised is publicly disclosed. That's number one. Number two, when you talk about something not being broken, we won the presidential election by a little over 2% of the vote. If you want to know, does anybody in here know the last time a Republican candidate for president carried the state by 7 points? It wasn't Donald Trump. It was actually, believe it or not, it was Mitt Romney in 2012. So here's the deal. I heard a lot of discussion about how you justify getting to 7% or 2%. Here's what I want to do. I want to win the election. I want to be reasonable about how we do it. I want to tell you the truth about what we can and can't accomplish. There's been a lot of discussion, and you heard him talk about having an accountability committee and refusing to qualify people. If we want to refuse to qualify people, then you're going to need to pass the plate and put together millions of dollars for the legal defense, because the moment we refuse to qualify someone for office, we will be sued. And we can't defend that lawsuit on a wing and a prayer. We're going to have to do it with lawyers who will have to be paid. And so if we want to do that, let's have a conversation about it. Let's come up with a plan about how we're going to finance it. But let's not make promises that we can't keep. Let's not make promises that we can't finance. Because I'll tell you right now, I love what I'm doing here. I'd love to do it for another 2 years, but I'm not going to tell y'all some story to get elected. I'm just going to tell you the truth. And the truth is, the way we win is by continuing the work we're doing on election integrity. It's about getting House Bill 397, as the Senate passed it, through in early 2026, as we did in 2024, having the best election integrity program in America, fielding the best field staff in America, and focusing on what brings us together, and not calling each other names, and not implying that people are dirty because you don't agree with them about how they're leading. That's how we win.
All right, the second question, on the count of three. On the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Gosh. Let's do this one more time, because a bunch of you came up at the exact same time. All right. 1, 2, 3. Oh, man. I think it was, I don't remember your name, so sorry.
Okay. Kathy. Thank you. I appreciate both of you volunteering to come to this forum. My question is primarily for David. You said that you took the role as vice chair and really didn't do much for the first 2 years, and you've done a lot of complaining about Josh, and I want to know how you reconcile those positions and the position that you're not going to let certain people qualify as Republicans. How are you reconciling that with, we're going to get everybody to come together? Because to me, that's the antithesis of getting everybody to come together.
Two hot seat questions. I didn't mean to do that.
That's okay. So with regard to like how we're going to bring people together like that, we got to have some frank conversations. Sometimes they're going to be difficult conversations, and we've got to be able to be willing to do that. The Georgia GOP's role is to set our job is to set the party agenda. All right? Setting the party agenda includes making sure that we have a legislative agenda that is shared well in advance of the legislative session so that everybody can get on board. The current legislative agenda was sent out after I sent an email to Karen Henschel and said, did I miss an email? Did something, what happened there? And she said, no, you didn't miss anything. And then I reached out and I sent a text over to Mr. Carver. He took a couple days to get back to me, and then shortly after that, I got what the legislative agenda was. And then Josh cut and pasted it and put it out to everybody, and it was well into the legislative session. That's not pre-planning. We've got to get out there and get ahead of the ball to make sure that we're moving forward. I've also got to make sure that when we're participating with people, we do have to bring them together. Listen, I respect Josh for what he did in the Senate. He was probably looked at as the guy who threw sand in the gears down there. I know that I'm looked at that right now too. But here's the thing: when I got elected, I reached out and tried to have conversations, email, text. I got ignored. I was treated like a mushroom, thrown in the dark and thrown crap on me. All right, and in January 2024, he dressed me down in front of the state committee with a PowerPoint, which he had prepared ahead of time, and that was not what you do to try and bring people together. So I'm not the only person that's not that you think that's not working here. It's coming from leadership too. I met with Josh in February 2024, and I gave him a 1924 silver peace dollar in recognition of hopefully having peace between us. I asked him for the voter files that are provided to the Georgia GOP for free. He said, "I'll get them to you." I never heard another word. That's not how you work with people. I know that I've got a different energy, a different way of approaching things, but that's where you have team members like me that have different skills and abilities, other team members that have different skills and abilities, and when you match people up together, you get a situation where 1 + 1 + 1 = 5. You can't have an individual that is acting as dictator trying to handle everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I will just say, number one, we offered the data that the party gets subject to an agreement that the party has to sign with the Republican National Committee. There are rules that go along with the data. If we don't follow the rules, we can lose access to the data for everyone, every licensed user. Now, as it happened, we had another person that was willing to sign the agreement to do the same project David was talking about, and so that person signed the agreement and they received the data, and he knows all of that. But the truth of the matter is, if the primary role of the Georgia Republican Party is to exclude other people, then two things are going to happen. We're going to be engaged in multi-million-dollar litigation that I don't know how you're going to pay for, and we're going to lose elections. And from my perspective, the goal next year, the overarching goal of the party, as I said at the beginning, is to fire John Ossoff and elect a Republican governor and Republicans up and down the ballot. That's what we've got to do. And if we lose that focus and get in and assemble a circular firing squad and start going after each other because you're not conservative enough or you don't agree with me on this issue, you didn't reply to my email. I've replied to just about every communication I've ever received from David. I didn't get a lot of communication after the convention in Columbus other than asking about admission to events featuring President Trump. And that's fine. I was happy to respond to that and happy to try to help with that. Look, I think the best way to understand whether or not what I've done over the last year and a half has been a one-man show is to say who's supporting me. I've got 20 members of our state executive committee that have publicly endorsed me for re-election. 11 of the 14 district chairs have endorsed me for re-election. And why is that? It's because we work well together. Unfortunately, if you have people that can't work well together, it does make it difficult. It does make it harder to accomplish what we've accomplished. And when I was in the state legislature, yeah, I tussled with the leadership but I was always fair and honest with them. I never made up anything about them. And I'll say this about election integrity. Brad Carver works year-round on election integrity. It never stops. And if you go take the time to read House Bill 397, you'll see almost every item in that agenda that we put out in that bill, because what he does and what they do works. And I'm proud of the work we've done and that we'll continue to do over the next 2 years.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one more question, and I'm going to open it up for each of you to do your 2-minute closing remarks. My question is this. So I'm looking around. I see Jaquan in the background over there. He's with the teen Republicans. I see Winslow with our Atlanta Young Republicans. And I'm so excited to see younger people. How will you work with their organizations as well as help to bring in younger Republicans? And I'm going to start with you, Josh McKoon, Chairman McKoon, first.
So one of the things I want to do, and it has been great to see the growth of our teen Republican, college Republicans, and young Republican organizations. And if you are knocking doors and you were making phone calls during the 2024 election, you saw them. You saw them out everywhere. It wasn't, let's go have a big party. It was like, let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. So thank you. Thank all of you for the work that you did. But one of the things that always grated on me when I was a young Republican is when people would say, you're the future of the party. You're the right now of the Georgia Republican Party. And so what I want to do is establish a chairman's advisory committee where we bring in not just young Republicans and college Republicans, but a lot of the strategic populations that President Trump has opened a door for us with that we can do more with. That's why when I was at the Black Republican Council gala earlier this year, I said we're going to go out and raise and invest $50,000 with the Black Republican Council to build on that growth that we saw in 2024. But we've got to do the same thing across a constellation of strategically important voter groups. And I believe by the time we get to the 2026 election, there are going to be a lot of things that the Trump administration has done that we're going to be able to highlight and sell and build on that growth. Because frankly, you want to talk about losing House seats, you want to talk about the overall trend of the state, it's pretty simple. We either make the Georgia Republican Party a true multi-ethnic, multi-generation coalition party, or we're going to be in the minority. And that is all about attitude. And the attitude has to be reaching out. It cannot be pushing away and excluding. And we did so much work in this area over the last year and a half. We had great coalitions. We had great communication in strategically important areas. And we can do even more. I don't know that I've highlighted this enough tonight, but having the Willis case over with, which I believe it will be over with very soon. I think the Supreme Court's going to turn her appeal down, and I think that the indictments will be dismissed. Not having to finance that litigation is like taking a rucksack off our back and being able to really run. So that's one of the areas where I feel like we can really improve on our performance and do even better in 2026 and get that winning margin that puts our candidates over the finish line. Thank you.
Mr. Cross, and I forgot, we do have Skylar here, the Log Cabin Republicans, which is another auxiliary, too, that we have to work with. Mr. Cross. Okay,
so I'm excited about having everyone that we can possibly get involved. I've got friends of every nationality, every race, every representation across the planet. One of the things that I think we have to do is for our conventions, if we want to have young people involved in our conventions, I want to set up a scholarship fund to make it so that young people, when they're coming, if you're under 30, you're going to get reduced, rates for participating in the convention. If you're in college, I want to have a scholarship to make it so that if you do come to the convention, we're going to help you cover the cost of your lodging and your food and your meals and things like that. Because if you're in college or if you're in high school and you're a young Republican, You know, at convention time, you have a choice between basically going to the beach or hanging out with your friends and spending your money doing that, or hanging out at the Georgia Republican, state convention. If I was 18 or 20 years old, it's a pretty easy choice, all right? I want to make that choice easier for them. When you talk about reaching out to other people in other nationalities, something really terrible and disgusting happened in Cobb County when my friend Sophia Farouk was put out there, and she was accused of being a militant Muslim extremist. All right? I'm going to tell you something right now. Nothing could be further from the truth. Sophia and her elderly father have spent the last 2 Christmases and the last 2 Thanksgivings at my home. There's nothing militant about her, nothing extremist about her. I have friends in the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce that are also Muslim, that are from other countries, India, Pakistan, China. They want to be involved. Every time I go out and talk with folks, they want to be there. Jaquan, I was out in Walton County with him speaking last night. I have 30 seconds. You can.
Let's be respectful. Let's be respectful to the candidates.
How are we going to do this? We have to bring people in. All right. What y'all don't know here tonight is that Jaquan was called by the chairman and asked not to run in this race because Josh didn't want to have competition for that seat. That's the truth. That's the facts. We can't be excluding people. We have to reach out. Jaquan is 18 years old. And I kid around with him and say, when I talk with you on the telephone, you're 18, but you sound like you're going on 50. He's an extraordinary young man. I'm excited to be working with him, and I'm excited for the future of the party. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. You made it to the last part. 2 minutes each. We're going to start with you, Chairman McKoon, to give your closing remarks.
Well, let me thank you, Janelle, and thank all of the county parties involved in hosting this evening, and of course Adventure Outdoors. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about the success we've enjoyed over the last year and a half at the Georgia Republican Party. As I said earlier, politics is a team effort. The biggest team wins, right? And so we were very successful in 2024, and we were successful for the reasons I talked about. We had a great field program. We focused on low propensity voters that could be motivated to vote for Donald Trump. We made sure we raised the financial resources we needed to be successful as a party. Over $3 million to the Georgia Republican Party by our homegrown donors. And yes, we had the best election integrity program in America. Between the legislative side, 2024 was such a good legislative session for us on election integrity. You should go read the AJC story where Garland Favorito, not me, Garland Favorito is quoted as saying it was one of the best sessions ever for election integrity. So we had a great legislative piece, we had the lawyers we needed, we had the volunteer poll watchers we needed, and we had that aggressive attitude we needed. And all of that came together in a huge win for us up and down the ballot. But 2026, one thing we agree on, 2026, it's not guaranteed. So you've got a simple choice. Are you going to go with the team that won the Super Bowl? Are you going to keep that front office? Or are you going to fire them and replace them with someone who has never helmed a winning election campaign? It's one thing to run a successful campaign with 1,500 people in a convention hall. It's quite another to run a successful election campaign with 5+ million people voting. I'd appreciate your vote in Dalton to be your state chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cross?
So Josh keeps forgetting that there is no I in team. He continues to take the victory laps like a fourth-string quarterback who got 3 yards for the championship team, going out there and going, look at what I did. It's not about me, if I become your chairman, I'm going to put qualified people in all the positions that we need to have. We're going to look at who was successful in the past. How are we going to score the most points? And I'm telling you, it comes down to data is number one, and number two is how you're going to be reaching out to those people. We have got millions of people that have moved here from other states that nobody is connected with. 2.8 million possibilities out there. That is going to move the needle, particularly in the urban counties. Across the rest of the state, in the rural counties, we've got to build up and continue to build on the successes that we've had there. We've got to draw out more people. We've got to show them that we're making strides in helping them change their community. It comes down to sometimes you have to have new ideas. I am new ideas. I am your agent of change, and we've got to have new ideas in the Georgia GOP. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you all. I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Sally Grubbs, but I want to say, I know Sally is no longer the chairman of Cobb County, but something that my husband and I always talk about is that Sally is one of the hardest working people we know. So we're grateful for that. And thank you for this opportunity to hold this, to moderate, and to serve you. Thank you.
Thank you, Janelle. You did a marvelous job. Let's give Janelle a hand. Now, nobody go running away, because I would like to know in this room if you are a delegate or an alternate to the state convention. Please raise your hand. Okay. That's pretty good. We got delegates and alternates here. Thank you all for being here tonight, and I hope everyone has a safe drive home. Please say thank you to the Wallace family by doing business here at Adventure Outdoors. And again, y'all have a great evening. Thank you.